Shalom, shalom, brother, beloved family. This is your girl, Sophia Spiritualite, and we're going to do the reading of Luke chapter 7 through 12. I actually have to read it. I couldn't find an audio Bible to read it to me, which is what I was looking for, but that's fine. I'll try not to talk too fast when I do it. So, this is Luke chapter 7. And you can follow along in your Bible or it's here on the screen. All right. So now, when he had ended all his sayings in the audience of the people, he entered into Capernaum. And a certain centurion's servant who was dear unto him was sick and ready to die. And when he heard of Jesus, he sent unto him the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they besought him instantly, saying, that he is worthy for whom he should do this. For he loveth our nation, and he hath built us a synagogue. Then Jesus went with them, and he was not far from the house. The centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou should enter under my roof. Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee, but say in a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man set under authority, having under me soldiers, and I say unto one, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turned to him about, and said unto the people that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And they were sent, returning to the house, found the servant whole that had been sick. And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now, when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came and touched the bier, and said that bear and they that bare him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak. And he delivered him to his mother. And there came a fear on all, and they glorified God, saying that a great prophet has risen up among us, and that God hath visited his people. And the rumor of him went forth throughout all Judea and throughout the region about. And the disciples of John showed him all of these things. And John called unto him two of his disciples, sent them to Jesus, saying, Art thou he that should come, or look we for another? When the men were come unto him, when the men were come unto him, they said, John Baptist has sent us unto thee, saying, Art thou he that should come, or look we for another? And in that same hour he cured many of their infirmities and plagues, and of evil spirits, and unto many that were blind he gave sight. Then Jesus answering unto them said, Go your way, and tell John what things ye have seen and heard, and how the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers cleanse, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor the gospel is preached. And blessed is he whoever shall not be offended in me. And when the messengers of John were departed, he began to speak unto the people concerning John. What went ye out into the wilderness for to see? A reed shaken with the wind? But when ye went out for to see a man clothed in soft raiment, behold, they which are gorgeously apparelled and live delicately are in king's courts. But what ye went out for to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and much more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thee thy way before thee. For I say unto you, among those that are born of woman, there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist, but he that is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. And all the people heard him, and the publicans justified God, being baptized with the baptism of John. But the Pharisees and lawyers rejected the counsel of God against themselves, being not baptized of him. And the Lord said, whereunto then shall I liken the men of this generation? And what are they like? They are like unto children sitting in a marketplace, calling one to another, saying, we have piped unto you, and ye have not danced. We have mourned to you, and ye have not wept. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say, he hath a devil. The Son of Man come eating and drinking, and ye say, behold, a gluttonous man, a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of all her children. But one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to meat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus was sat at meat in Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with ointment. Now, when the Pharisee which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, this man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answering unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And he saith, Master, say on. There was a certain creditor which had two debtors. The one owed 500 pence and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him most? Simon answered and said, I suppose he to whom he forgaveth both. And he said unto him, Thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman and said, seest thou this woman? I entered into thine house. Thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she hath washed her feet with tears, and wiped them with the hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman, since time I came in, has not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but this woman hath anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And he said unto her, thy sins are forgiven. And they sat at meat with him, and began to say within themselves, who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, thy faith hath saved thee. Go in peace. All right, I want to read the whole thing first, and then we're going to go back and break down some of these stories because um, first, I should start with the end, but I'm going to start at the beginning. So, at the beginning of the chapter, let's look at how the centurion responded. So, um, oh Lord, I didn't mean to do that. So, the centurion, um, so the friends of the centurion or people in the centurion's house said, "Oh, let's go get Jesus." And the centurion, he didn't say, "Oh, I didn't want Jesus." He said, "Look, I'm not. I order people around. Nobody should be ordering you to come to my house and save, whoever is in my house. That's not appropriate." And Jesus said, "Okay, well," he said, "if you just speak the word, then my servant shall be healed." So he didn't have to actually come to his house. Well, that's kind of like um that's interesting because let me turn this Wi-Fi off. This thing is not working. Okay. That's interesting because see, here we go. That's interesting because and then Jesus said thy faith has made thee whole, right? So or rather I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. So this centurion, again, who would be a sinner by all accounts of the Hebrews. Now remember, the Hebrews were great, great sinners. This is not um, people who were doing what they were supposed to do. That's why our ancestors got punished, because we weren't doing what we were supposed to do, and everything had to be just so, and the Pharisees and whatnot. And we'll see that later on in this chapter. So this man had great faith, and he just spoke the word, and the man's servant was healed. Now, um, then this story, starting at verse 12. Now he came to the gate of the city, and the dead man carried out the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much of the people of the city was with her. So this was a widow. Everybody was sad. Everybody was with her. She had already been through this great pain of being a widow. Now she lost her son. So Jesus walked up. He saw her and had compassion on her. So she didn't even ask for her son to be healed, but the Most High met her where she was, and gave her what she needed, because she had and he because he had compassion on her. So that's another thing. Like, if you are sincere with your emotions, then the Most High will have compassion on you. All right. So the next story that's in here is when John the Baptist sent his disciples to see what Jesus was doing, and to say, if to ask, I guess, if he was the one. And I think that's interesting, and I think in this is why you got to read all four accounts that we have. But I think it's interesting because if why would now John the Baptist knew very well who Jesus was, so why would he send his disciples to see? So that's a whole bottle of worms in and of itself. It's kind of like so that his disciples could see for themselves. Maybe they hadn't seen Jesus in action, so on and so forth. So it's really like, yeah, go and see for yourselves. Go and ask. Go and see for yourselves. The messengers of John, disciples of John. So okay, let's see. The next one is okay. This is the Pharisees and the lawyers did not like John the Baptist because they weren't baptized by him. They were baptized by another. And so Jesus is telling them, so you mean to tell me, like, when y'all saw John the Baptist, you didn't like him because he didn't eat or drink wine. You don't like me because I do eat and drink wine. Which one is it? Nobody can be perfect enough for the Pharisees and the lawyers. And that's what this is saying. No matter what you do, nobody will be perfect enough. So that is to say, Jesus drank and ate. He's saying it right here. The Son of Man is come eating and drinking, and ye say, behold, a gluttonous man, a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. Look at this. I mean, this is a description. We know he was a drinker because he turned the water into wine, and later on, like next up in his story, he goes to somebody's house to eat meat. So that's another thing with the Hebrews. They won't. They a lot of them and a lot of the Catholic Hebrews, as they describe, oh, you can't eat this, this is unclean, you can't eat that, that is unclean. This says that the Pharisee wanted to have Jesus for dinner. He went to dinner and they were having meat. I'm assuming that this was a great offense to most like Hebrews at the time to be eating meat in this fashion. And Jesus went and ate. He didn't cry and complain about what it was. Oh, I don't eat pork, I don't this, I don't that. He had meat and it was set before him and he ate it. But the important part of this part of the story is that the woman saw Jesus. Let me see. When she found out, back verse 37, when she found out that Jesus was coming into the Pharisee's house, she met them at the house, and she bought a box of ointment, and uh she stood at his feet behind him and washed her feet with her tears. And this is verse 38, and wiped them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet from behind. So this man is trying to walk forward, and you got this woman that's literally at your feet, weeping, wiping your feet from all directions with her hair and putting oil on her feet. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? But that's how. that's to me, I took this as a sign of this is kind of like how we should come. One of the ways that we can come to the Most High and show our sincerity, so that we are truly honest with our seeking of Him and our desiring to be forgiven. Because like when you supercharge a candle, imagine, I mean, I did this, but so imagine you supercharge a candle, and then while you're crying already says, not to cry, not to wipe your tears, but you use the candle to wipe your tears. And then you wipe the the candle on the hairs of your head, and then you anoint it with oil if you're going to anoint the candle with oil anyway. How much louder is that prayer in the spirit realm than if you just like regularly supercharge a candle, if you just regularly light a candle? I mean, to me, that seems like it would be a much louder cry. And you know, and we don't see it in this chapter because people didn't have to beg Jesus to operate in this chapter, but in later chapters we'll see people beg Jesus to do stuff, and he was like, "Nah, I can't be bothered. I'm not." Not that he couldn't be bothered, but he was like, "I'm not getting in the middle of this. Y'all are like doing the most, the absolute most. I'm not going to get in the middle of this." But I also want to point out um, in verse 40. So Jesus is sitting at the table with the Pharisee, right? And he sees the woman doing this thing, and the Pharisee is like, "What manner of woman you letting touch you? If you were a real prophet, you would know that this is not the type of person you allow to touch you." So instead of Jesus addressing the Pharisee who's in his face, he says, "Simon, I got something to say." And Simon's like, "Man, go off." To me, this is like the most Negro statement in this whole chapter, because he doesn't just go off on the person. He's like, "Man, I got something to say." He's not even talking to the Pharisee. He's not even bringing it to him, because he's like, he's not going to get this. Let me say it to somebody who understands what I'm about to say. "Man, Simon, I got something to say." Simon says, "Go off." Then he begins to go off into this parable with the debtor and the debtors and the creditor. And so, um, and Simon's like, listen to what he got to say. He says, "I suppose that he whom he forgave most will love him most." He gave the right answer. That's the correct answer. And Jesus says, verse 43, "Thou hast rightly judged." So then he turned. Jesus is still ignoring the Pharisee. Now the Pharisee, like I said again earlier, verse 39, the Pharisee went off. "Don't, why you letting this woman touch you? You should know better, this and that." He says to Simon, "Man, I got something to say." Simon say, "Okay, go off." Then he goes into the parable, and then he says, "Simon, who do you think is going to love him more?" He said, "Well, the person he forgave more." And Jesus said, "That's right. That's it." So then, still ignoring the Pharisee, he turns and talks to the woman, and he turns to talk to the woman, and he rebukes the Pharisee while talking to the woman. I can't even imagine how many rules was broken right there. Plus, the woman was an unclean woman to the Pharisee. So not only is the Pharisee being ridiculed because Jesus is not speaking to him, Jesus is speaking to the woman, and he's outlining what the woman did, and then he basically is telling the woman, "Okay, your sins are forgiven." He didn't do that to the Pharisee. Pharisee didn't get nothing. Did nothing. Now the Pharisee invited him to his house. He asked him to eat with him, all of that, and he didn't get forgiven for all of that. For all of that work, pleasantries that he put together, it wasn't a sacrifice, but the woman made an actual true sacrifice, a real offering to the Most High, a real sincere effort to um show the Most High through His Son Yeshua the glory He deserved, and therefore his sins were forgiven. And for the Pharisee, that was it. He don't even. I guess he just sits back. Look, for verse 49, and They sat at meat with him, and began to say to themselves, "Who is he that forgiveth sins also?" So they sat back at the table, Jesus told her to go in peace, and that's the end of the story. So I mean, by the end of chapter 7, they're pretty upset because they didn't get their sins forgiven. They're like, who is he that forgives sins? You can't forgive sins. That's not your job. This and that. So that's to say that this particular chapter, this is why this card kept coming up for us, because we got to read this like, and you got to read between the lines with some of this stuff, but you literally have to read this. So that's just a quick study of chapter 7. I'm gonna do these all individually because I feel like I could go on and on about some of these stories, and I want to make it easy for like easy bite-sized pieces for people. So um, everyone, the spirits, you're invited to go in peace. Everyone, you're invited to be at peace, and always remember the Most High is your peace. Shalom, and I'll see you in the next video.